Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today is Sunday when I'm filming, but is likely some other day of the week because I have a few videos coming out this week, and there's tops and all sorts of other things. But a couple people had asked me for tutorials on how to make this particular card. This is the never-ending fold. I've also seen it called an infinity card, and essentially it is 6x6 total. So it's made up of four pieces that are 3x6 and then scored at 1.5 on each side. So that's basically the measurements that we're going to make, but let me show you how to put this together. In addition to your normal stuff, you will need a way to score and a way to cut. And you want to use basically flat elements on this card because of the way that it folds. So you want to stay away from anything dimensional. So ephemera and stickers are kind of the way to go, and pattern paper. One thing I should also mention is you can make the entire card out of double-sided pattern paper, and then you don't need to do this business of like cutting mats. But I really like sort of the way that this looks. So I'm going to do mine this way. But remember, you can basically just cut the base pieces out of double-sided pattern paper and then start decorating if that is more your thing. If you're figuring out how much pattern paper you need to decorate, you basically need four pieces of 6x6 because we're essentially decorating four card fronts. Two of them are good for scene pieces, and others are better for one non-directional. Anyway, this is my PSA. You might wonder, why do I have this boring paper here? Well, this is going to be a card for a friend of mine. So if you are celebrating a holiday that we are halfway to, perhaps, um, here in the month of May. You may or may not want to continue watching this video until you get my card. If you are not worried about that, let us do the big reveal and say, what are we making? Of course, we are making something orange. And what could be better with orange than black cats and Halloween funness? Because halfway to Halloween, here we come. This is the Charm Collection, which I've never used and bought on clearance last year from Graphic 45. I really like this charm sentiment. I think we're going to use that. One thing that the card I just showed you does not have is anywhere to write something, but we are going to be fixing that in this upcoming card. Also, the first part of this video is a good sort of tutorial on how to actually like use the card. If anyone needs that, feel free to clip it out. Anyway, I think this is easier for this particular size card. It's easier to cut out of 12x12 because basically you just need one half of this. But before we do that, we want to figure out where the grain direction is. As you can see, probably not well on camera, this is not really flopping very much. But if I rotate it, it's going to feel more floppy from one direction or the other. So it feels much more floppy this way, even though it's hard to see on camera. Um, so we want to keep that in mind as we cut our pieces. We're going to cut this first, and then we'll do the base, and then we'll worry about our fabulous paper, because if not, this is just going to turn into me talking about paper for an hour, which is probably not what you came to watch. Anyway, so if you have a trimmer like this, where there's actually, if you butt this up, turns into it gives you exactly 6 inches. Really nice for cutting for our particular cutting today because I don't have to take the stupid arm out. This is a Stampin' Up! Trimmer. There's links below if you're interested in this or other things. Um, I am also using the Stampin' Up! Pumpkin Pie cardstock because it's orange and I want to cut orange things. So we have one hot side left over, so we can always make another card out of it. So I will set that aside. Because it is floppier in this direction, sorry, I just cut this wrong, but that's okay. We shall persevere. We want to basically cut these so the way that this is floppy is going to line up with the score lines. So I cut this not in the most convenient way possible. But we can either score these all at once or later. I think I will score it later. If you have the grain running, so the grain actually runs perpendicular. If it is easily foldable this way, which mine is not, you could just score everything now. But I cut this the other way, so we are not going to just cut this up and then score these individually. So I'm just going to measure this over to 3. I'm going to grab my cutter. I'm going to cut it. I'm going to do that. over and over again. There may be some of this video that I just cut out because once we get to a certain point, the whole thing gets kind of repetitive, but we are not there yet. And there we go. So we have all of our base pieces. The way that these are going to lay out is basically like this when we're done. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to set two of these aside and work on these two first. I am going to move these to 1.5. And you can probably score two of these at once. I'm just going to do them one at a time because that way I get less confused. So I'm going to just score this at 1.5 inches. And that didn't work very well. I think I must have something in the groove of my trimmer. The scoring has been a little bit weird lately. Anyway, there we go. Well, let me do this on the other scoring board because it's gonna be a lot easier for you guys to see. And it's less on my desk. So let's pop this guy out. This is Score Pal, so it'll be easy. I think this will be easier to see. So 1.5, score it. Yeah, this is much easier to see. And then I usually rotate this and then go back to 1.5, and I put in a very light score line on two of these. This is really just for you to know where to put the glue later. Um, so it doesn't need to be like super duper fancy. Uh, you can then flip this over and score it from the backside if you would like to do so. That's going to help make it just easier to fold because basically this folds in both directions, so it's not really a um, kind of mountain or a valley because it folds in both directions as you use the card. I just wiggle those a little bit, and you can see we have our very light score line here, and then these are the ones that went. The reason that we do this is glue only goes in one of these corners, so that's why we kind of do this for our first two. So let's just do that again, and it's 4.5 if you don't want to flip. Then I'm going to rotate. I'm just putting in enough so I can see this later. And I like using wet glue for this card, but you can use whatever you'd like, obviously. There isn't really a right or wrong way to do this. And the reason I'm scoring on both sides is this is probably about an 80-pound cover weight paper. I do like a slightly heavy paper for this just because it makes it easier later on. And then we are going to go back and just do this all over again. There we are. This one, since it's a top piece, I don't need to know where the glue lines are, so I just tend to wiggle it when I'm done just to make sure that the score lines are in. And now if you make this as a rectangular card, all your pieces are not going to be the same, so you have to be a little bit more cognizant of which piece you're working on and what direction it's going to fold. And that's all the scoring we have. So again, not it looks like a fancy card, but after you make a couple of them, it's not too difficult. Anyway, so we have our four pieces. And before we continue, let us clear our desk so that we don't get it gluey. And just look at all the cute Halloween paper. Because, hey, it's my channel and I want to look at all the cute Halloween paper. Because we need to pick out what paper we want. So looking back at our reference card, one of these pieces, I'm going to use white here. So I basically don't need to worry about this scene, but I do have sort of a second scene. So if I have good scene paper, I definitely want to use it here. And then basically I just want some non-directional paper. It could all be the same. It could all be different. It doesn't really matter. So we have some fun Halloween stickers. And what you basically want to do is look for things that are either so because these are 3 by 3, or sorry, 1.5 by 1.5, these measurements are going to be 1 1/4, 2 3/4, 2 3/4, 2 3/4. So basically, you want things that are less than 2 3/4 so that they will fit within. So like something like this would be pretty cool. Like this boo would be kind of neat to put here. Um, something like one of these hey pumpkins, we'd probably wind up wanting to like cut it in the middle so that it would fit well. Just saying. We also have some ephemera pieces you can see that we can pull in. There's really neat clock, and there's some larger frame pieces. But basically, anything really big we probably want to stay away from. So we will put our stickers to the side. Um, now this is directional, but I really think this would be a cute pattern. It'll would look really tone on tony and nice, I think, with the our cardstock. So and this is a cut apart, so we may want to use some of these pieces. Now, I like this not all tricks are treats. We can actually use this. We just need to, we would need to cut along the lines here and then measure this to figure out the center and then basically split it. So we could use this as our one of our focal points. So uh, and something like this, I think, would be good if because this is a little directional, but not that. This would be good, I think, as potentially direct. This might all be directional paper. So this would be a really good non-directional piece. It is the same color, almost exactly as the background. Um, these flowers I like. I think the flower is a definite winner. It's got a pretty vibrant pattern on the other side. I think this would be good to cut little squares out of. So I think we could cut um, 1 1/4 and then you just keep it to do a whole bunch of squares out of. So I think we can use this one for our squares. I guess I should look through all of it. There are some black cats. Some black cats would be fantastic. I think our black cats would be really great for some of these pieces. Although, again, you kind of have to watch your directions. So, again, we'd probably cut 1 1/4 and then cut out of that. So, I think the black cat. So, that gives us sort of green and purple, which would be a nice offset. Now, let's just. There are a lot of cool cut aparts in here. Um, so let's see. There was a cool, almost scene piece, I feel like. Yeah, I like this. This one with the cats and the bats, I think, would be really fun as um, one of our pieces. It has some neat topography stuff on the back. So if we want, we could just use, we could cut a 6 by 6 and, oh, I like that. That's very tone on tone. Okay, I like both the pieces here. I think that's all we need, but let's get our card together and let's also get our, cut some white pieces as well. So let's talk about how we put the card together. In retrospect, that might have been nice to do before we spent a bunch of time going through the how pretty the paper is. Okay, so these are our two top pieces. We can tell because they don't have any score lines on them. These are our two bottom pieces. They have a very faint score line in. It's very nice to line these up if you have a glass mat that will do that. We basically want to line these up so they are full square. What you can do is if you have any sort of tape that is low tack, if it's not low tack, it's not the end of the world because we're going to cover most of this up. But let me just get the ends here. And we're just going to tack this down. I don't need to tack it down entirely. I just want to make sure that um, this stays level while I am attaching the card together. Oop, little extra tape. And if you have tape that's not super, well, this, as you can see, is pretty low tack. But if your tape is not low tack, you can always rub it on like a t-shirt or other thing that might be potentially a little linty, and that will help make it low tack. So, see, I have this. This isn't quite lined up anymore, but it doesn't really matter. But basically, we just want to, but we have this lined up with itself, so we should be good. So I'm going to take wet glue. You can also use tape for this, but wet glue gives you a little bit more play. I'm going to not put it all the way to the edge, just because when we put paper on this, it is going to squish out, and it would be best if we didn't glue our card together entirely. So I'm just going to do it like that, as you can see, and then what we want to do is get our low tack tape off on one side, leave it on the other side to sort of anchor us. And then we just want to line up our corners essentially like this. And then just burnish to make sure the glue is nicely attached. Once we have the second piece, once we have one piece on, this is going to hold together a lot better. So I'm going to just take my low tack tape off there, and then we're going to do the same thing. We can just put this up here and then make sure that we are square. Now, if you are not entirely square, it is not going to be the end of the world, because once we let this dry, the next step is to sort of flex the card and then sort of trim anything, like trim the edges off anywhere that the card seems to be sticking. So our first turn is going to be like this, and then as you turn, I recommend just sort of burnishing down. You can do this with your hand or with a bone folder. I usually just work it with my finger. So that's our first fold. Our second fold is going to be folding these back over themselves, and here you can see why we need, there we go. And this seems pretty good. And then it folds back, and there you are. A little oopsie there, but that's okay. And as you play with the card, this will loosen up quite a bit. And here we see we had a little piece that this caught a little bit. It makes sense because as you look, it's not completely flush. So what I'm going to do is, you can either do this with your trimmer or with scissors. We just want to basically take like a fly's eyelash off so that it hopefully does not stick as much. And that seems to have corrected it. It is still a little sticky here, so I'll show you the other way to do this. The other way is to just grab your trimmer, any trimmer really, and you just want to get this just a little over the edge. Then, whoops, sorry about that. We're going to stabilize by holding down the plastic bar. We're going to cut. It's going to cut a very small, thin slice off. So small it is hard to see. So like that's the amount we're taking off. We're just sort of shaving this down until it doesn't catch when we're turning. Because really the only thing here is we want a card that works really well for the recipient. And there we go. So going back to our original card, our front piece is going to basically have the split in the middle vertically. We're going to turn it, and then this is our other piece that we're going to have the split uh, horizontally. Now, this is kind of the best side. So this, and then we have one more like this. Then we have this side. Anyway, there we go. So this piece with these two is usually the best one to put your sentiment on. That means that the piece where it opens horizontally is going to be sort of more of our scene piece. So if we want to grab one of the more scene kind of things that is here. I'm pretty sure is some very, generally with Graphic 45, you get some pretty, ooh, that one's really neat. I didn't go through all the paper, but let's say, let me just see if there's anything that looks like a scene. I do like that. This one is really cool. We could use that. If there isn't a scene, then it matters less as we kind of work through this. Now, there's this Harlequin thing, which I think we could use, because this is much more like a scene. So, just to show you how this would work, I'm going to start with this and then end on our other piece. But since this is more of a scene, what we're going to probably do is cut a 6x6. Then we're going to start cutting sequentially to get the parts we need. So it's been maybe half an hour, 40 minutes in normal time. Well, I don't think it's been closer to half an hour. And we have finished our card. Well, at least finished the next step. So I did use some cream and the boo stamp. Now I got a little schmutz here, which, since it's a Halloween card, one could either treat as distressing or we can put something cute over it. I really like the stripes in retrospect. So I used it here. And then the neat thing is when you fold, the black cat piece remains the same, but the stripes change in direction. And then this was a piece that I cut in half. So you have a lot of cats on this particular one. And then when you fold all the way to the back, then you get sort of more of a happy Halloween kind of vibe. Now, this piece could use decorating, and this piece could use decorating, and this piece doesn't need it as much, but I thought we could pull out our ephemera and see if anything takes our fancy. Back to our front. The broom, if the broom fits. I like that as a, then we have our inside, and oh, I like how this came together. Anyway, and then here's the back. So that is how you make a never-ending fold card. As you see, this is where we trimmed it off. See, had I not done that with scissors, you wouldn't have gotten this weird line here. But I mean, again, probably I will notice that more than the recipient. But anyway, thanks for checking this out. Happy halfway to Halloween and talk to you guys later.